Hey everyone, this is James, your openly gay blind metalhead here. Tonight's video is going to be about yesterday's remarks regarding autism that was given by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the so-called head of Health and Human Services. I have the video pulled up here, so I haven't seen it yet, but I have read a bunch of posts on Facebook about it, many of whom are basically condemning what he said. And there's going to be another video that I'm going to react to that's probably going to be out tomorrow, but I'll get to that towards the end of this one. So yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gave a conference in which he compared autism, well, not compared, he stated, of course, things about autism that continue to frame it as a disease. And he talks about autism being an epidemic. So I've got the video pulled up of his remarks and we're going to react to it now. Like I said, I haven't seen it. And although I've seen quick sound bites of what he said, I'm sure that everything said in full is going to be just as bad as I suspect it's going to be. So here we go.
Human Services. Welcome to the press and the supporters of the MAHA movement who are here today to listen to Secretary Kennedy and Walter Zaharodny's remarks regarding the CDC's latest Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network survey that was published yesterday in the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I am honored to introduce to you Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I'm going to go over some of the key numbers from the ADDM report. Overall, the autism is increasing in prevalence at an alarming rate. The study tests 8-year-olds who were born in 2014. And by the way, these studies are 2 years later than they should be. And one of the things that we're going to do as we move this function to the Administration for a Healthy America, to the the new Chronic Disease Division, is we are going to have updated real-time data so that people can look at this, Americans can understand what is happening with chronic disease in this country in real time, and not have to wait 2 years to react. We don't wait 2 years to react to a measles epidemic, and we should not, or any kind of infectious disease. We shouldn't have to do that for diabetes or autism.
Already this bastard is really pissing me off because if you're not able to hear it, he's talking about wanting to track autism earlier than 2 years based on the study of these 8-year-olds. And then he compares it to diabetes and saying that we don't wait for a measles outbreak. Oh, you mean like the measles outbreak that you, with your fucked up anti-vaxxer advice in Samoa, basically caused by virtue of the fact that you gave them the advice? Junior, is that what you're talking about? You mean that measles outbreak? And to say nothing of the fact that he's also comparing autism to diabetes, measles, and probably many other, let's see if he puts cancer in that list as well, because that always seems to get thrown in to the diseases to which some things get compared, like whether it be drug addiction or, in this case, autism. And I don't know if anybody is seeing what I believe to be the eugenics implications of all this, because he talks about wanting to not have to wait 2 years to find out if your kid has autism, in essence is what he's saying. And with that being the case, then what's that going to mean for autistic kids? Of course, it'll mean getting them into tortures like ABA therapy much earlier than they usually do, if not outright having an implication of abortions to try to rid the world of autistic kids. So let's get back to this.
The ASD prevalence rate in 8-year-olds is now 1 in 31. Shocking.
I'll have to fact check that, but even if it is, so what?
There's an extreme risk for boys. Overall, the risk for boys of getting an autism diagnosis in this country is now 1 in 20. And as high in California, which has the best data collection. So it probably also reflects the national trend, 1 in 12.5 boys. This is part of an unrelenting upward trend. The prevalence 2 years ago was 1 in 36. Since the first ADDM report in 1990, which was 1992 births, autism has increased by a factor of 4.8. That's 480%, I believe. The first ADDM survey was 22 years ago when prevalence was 1 in 150 children. In all the core states, the trend is consistently upward, and most cases now are severe. So about 25% of the kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal.
Okay, so some of them are severe, and usually when I hear about some of these kids having severe autism, that would be like nonverbal, like what Kennedy just said. And then some autism parents will talk about the eloping that some of their kids do, which continues the severe autism trope. But nonverbal is definitely one that you see associated when they want to label autism as severe autism. Which, let's be clear, severe autism is just a bullshit term. It'd be like taking myself who's blind, totally blind in both eyes, and then me also having my prosthetic leg, and then calling me severely, it would, like calling me severely blind, or, oh, you have severe blindness because you have a prosthetic leg and you're totally blind in both eyes. That's so fucking ableist.
Non-toilet trained and have other stereotypical features, headband.
Yeah, there's some autistic kids who might have problems with going to the toilet. Some of whom might have colostomy bags. There is a kid who's it's not like literally his Facebook page, but it's a Facebook page ran by his mother. It's the Stalin's Way Facebook page, and Stalin has a colostomy bag. But that's severe autism? Really?
Rewind 10 seconds. Play button.
25% of the kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, and have other stereotypical features, headbanging, tactile and light sensitivities, stimming, toe.
Yeah, it's called, for the light sensitivity, that can be, here, I got a cure for that. Either turn the fucking lights off, or use lights that to which the kids aren't going to be hypersensitive. And then he talks about the headbanging. That's not so much a stim as much as that can be self-injurious behavior. And that can definitely not be unique to autistic kids. There are other people who are non-autistic who might bang their head as a form of self-injurious behavior. The problem then is not the autism or the non-autism. The problem is what's causing them to do self-injurious behavior in the first fucking place.
Walking, etc.
Rewind 10 seconds. Pause.
Tactile and light sensitivities, stimming, toe walking, etc. One of the things that I think that we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses.
No, we don't. Okay, first of all, he mentions rocking and toe walking as some of the stemming. Blind people rock. Well, some blind people rock, and of course that's aggressively corrected out of us in ways that you would think are similar to what is done to autistic kids who rock. People who are not blind and people who do not have autism might rock back and forth. Some might move their leg up and down as a stem. So here's a news flash, RFK Jr. Stemming is not unique to autism. It can be part of autism, but it's not a part of just autism, you fucking idiot. And then the thing about needing to move away from the ideology of the increasing autism rates being because of, as an artifact of better diagnosing. No, you fucking asshole. We don't need to move away from that. And it's not a fucking ideology. Because of better diagnostic criteria, and I've got a lot to say about the diagnostic criteria as well, just because the fact of the wording still implies that autism is a disease. And I definitely can go on a tangent about that and how it continues to medicalize autism. But because we have the various other screening tools and the other things that reveal autism, that means that in more people it's able to be exposed so that the people can get the accommodations they need and the various supports they need so that they can live the life that they want to live. So no, we don't need to move away from that at all, because if we did, then we would go back and continue to have the numbers that would imply that autism is rare in the way that it was being interpreted as years and even decades ago. So no, Kennedy is completely wrong about this.
Better recognition or changing diagnostic criteria. If you look at Table 3 of the ADDM report, it's clear that the rates are real, that they are increasing in the last 10 years, which is the beginning with the first one. Year by year, there is a steady, relentless increase. I want to, because this epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously, there are people who don't want us to look at environmental exposures. And so I want to just read you.
No, it's not that people don't want you to look at environmental exposures. It's that there are no environmental exposures that cause autism. So of course you're not going to look at something that isn't fucking there. Discounting it because it's not there is not the same as people telling you to not look at it. And if you have medical officials who tell you we're not going to look at it, it's not because they want to, and I'm waiting for Kennedy to bring this word up, they're not trying to cancel you. It's that you're asking them to do a part of their job that's not there.
Some of the little excerpts from some of the older studies. The baseline for autism in this country was established with the largest epidemiological study in history. A study of all 900,000 children in the state of Wisconsin, children under the age of 12. They found 0.7 children had autism in every 10,000. That's less than 1 in 10,000. Today we're at 1 in 31. That study also confirmed the 4-to-1 male to female ratio. There were at that time just over 60 children in Wisconsin with autism. And today it's around 20,000. In 1987, there was another exhaustive study, a peer-reviewed study in North Dakota, set out to count every child in the state with a pervasive developmental disorder, including autism. That study meticulously combed through every record, every diagnosis, and he even conducted in-person assessments of the entire population of 180,000 children under 18. The autism rate they found was 3.3 per 10,000, so that's in line with the 1 in 10,000 that was found in Wisconsin 17 years earlier. For context, today the last number of 1 in 36 is 83 times higher. In 1987, out of 1 million, every 1 million kids, 300.
And I want to, this doesn't completely relate, but it kind of does. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been known to say in past interviews in the last several years about, particularly when he was talking about vaccines and how they've had the additives to make them toxic. Yeah, that's pretty much his way of being the Trojan horse into the anti-vaxxer movement, is to talk about how no, it's not that vaccines are dangerous to their core as much as it's profit-driven pharmaceutical companies wanting to make so much money that they won't worry about what's being put into them, and if there's some impurative or some dangerous additive that gets in, then that's what can make them dangerous. Insofar as that's not happening, I'm actually pro-vaccine, is essentially Kennedy's argument. But once you listen to him keep continuing to talk about all the vaccines that he says are dangerous, then you really find that his idea of, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm just pro-safe vaccines. But when you listen to him denounce everything, you find that for him there's not going to be any safe. There is no pro-safe vaccine. It's just another way for him to be anti-vaxxer without, well, it's go under the headline of tell me you're an anti-vaxxer fraud without actually telling me you're an anti-vaxxer fraud. But within that context of the vaccines, in recent interviews he's given over the last few years, he would talk about, he would get stuck on this point of around 1989 is when you had an increase in peanut allergies and various other allergies, and the vaccines getting toxic and so on and so forth. And I bring this up because it's like, now he's talking about this in 1987, they did the study, and in 1987, what is it with this fucking guy in the late 80s? What, I mean, like, why is he so stuck on, in 1987 and in 1989? It's like, I mean, sure, he's probably giving actual, like, facts about maybe some of the rates of this stuff, but still, it's like, why does he keep going back to this? Because, like I said, in some of his other interviews, it was 1989 was the increase in food allergies and peanut allergies, and in 1987 they did the more comprehensive study about autism. It's like, what is it with this fucking guy in the late 80s? Is this like a fetish for him?
30 were diagnosed with autism. Today, there are 27,777 for every million. If you accept the epidemic denier's narrative, you have to believe that researchers in North Dakota missed 98.8% of...
All right, so I want to do a thought experiment because I see where he's going with this. So this will probably sound racist, but I think it's a good comparison. And I'm saying this more towards that, there's people who would act like this. I certainly don't agree with these people, but just to do a thought experiment to make this more understandable to what this ableist fuck is actually saying. You have obviously back in the days of like racial segregation, you didn't tend to have a lot of black people around white-owned establishments or anything like that. And so if you took someone who was today who was white and they live in a white suburban, like on average, a white suburban neighborhood, they work at a white, predominantly white populated job. Their kids go to predominantly white populated schools, but yet let's say that it was today that they got rid of all of the typical Jim Crow laws and various other racist laws, and let's say today they put in the protections for blacks and other racial minorities, and you started getting a huge number of black employees in your previously predominantly white working place, and then same for your kids' previously predominantly white school. Well, if you were to say, well, there's this exorbitantly higher than normal amount of black people in these schools and workplaces now, what's going on? Well, you'd be a fucking racist. And to kind of recorrect myself and take the idea of the civil rights laws being put in today, recorrecting that and putting that back in the day in which it happened and not pretending like it was happening today, but let's go back to when it actually did happen, with the changes they made to Jim Crow and all the other stuff back in the 50s and 60s. And I'm sure you had a lot of people saying, I don't understand why we're getting all these, and of course you can imagine the racial epithets they put in there, in our schools and workplaces now. It's horrible, the moral degeneracy of it all, or some such other nonsense. Well, we call them a fucking racist. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying this nonsense, and you get some people who are even low-key going along with what he's saying of, well, he might have a point, and there does tend to be a little bit more higher than normal amounts of people with autism now, and maybe he's seen a few things about these vaccines that we don't know about. Yeah, that's going to kind of hint around about the video that I'll be reacting to tomorrow. There was two people who had supported Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and then recently retracted their support for him. But I'll get to that at the end of this video. So this is the game that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is playing. He's basically the ableist equivalent to the racist asshole who looked around at all the black kids being integrated into previously predominantly white schools back in the 50s and 60s and be like, what's all these black people do? What's all these black kids doing here? We're certainly getting an increase of black people and black kids now. And as we can see that as the racist bullshit that it is, we need to see what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying here for the racist, or not racist, but, well, he is racist, but we'll get to that another time. We need to see this for the ableist shit that it is and how these things intersect.
The children with autism. That thousands of profoundly disabled children were somehow invisible to doctors, teachers, parents, and even their own study. The same researchers who followed the original cohort.
And I want to add on to what I was saying a minute ago, like with the thought experiment. It would be, instead of recognizing that the legislation that was passed to integrate various establishments, the passing of those laws and legislations that made segregation illegal. Spoiler alert, it's not exactly as a thing in the past as you'd like to think it is, but when these laws were passed through and you had more black people coming through, what Kennedy is saying here would be as ridiculous as some racist asshole trying to attribute the influx of black people into previously white-owned establishments as some strange either inalterable law of nature or some sort of mysterious disease process. And of course it's not, and we recognize any dissenting opinion disagreeing with integration is just racist dog shit. So we need to see Kennedy and his shit that he's saying is the ableist bullshit that it is.
For 12 years, to double check their number, they went back in 2000 and found that they had missed exactly one child. So doctors and therapists in the past were not stupid. They weren't missing all these cases. The epidemic is real.
No, I think that we're missing all these cases, and no, the epidemic is not real.
1959 and
because it's not a fucking disease. And that's the only way that you're going to make sense of anything of what Kennedy is saying. If you believe that autism is a disease that needs to be either treated, highly managed, or even cured, well then yeah, the bullshit that he's saying here is going to make sense. But I'm not someone who believes that autism is a disease or pathological in any way. And to all the hysterical, whiny, neurotic, batshit crazy autism parents out there, my baby is seizing every day and he elopes every 5 minutes and I'm so tired. I don't doubt the people who say that they're who talk about their autistic child. When you have the autistic child who actually does have seizures, issues with eloping, even sensory issues where their dietary intake might be limited to just a few foods, even to the point of some of them possibly having to get feeding tubes. Those medical, I don't know what you, I don't want to say complications, but those that medical side of it is obviously serious when they have seizures, which is probably for most of them would probably be like epilepsy, and then feeding issues to the point of needing a feeding tube. Those are medically serious issues in the sense of like they need to be addressed, and I'm not saying that they don't need to be. But what I'm saying is that when you have an autistic child who has those medical needs, that is not severe autism in your child. And those needs are not caused directly by autism. You can have autistic kids and autistic adults who happen to have epilepsy, and then you have autistic kids and autistic adults who don't have epilepsy and who don't have sensory issues that cause them to have problems with feeding such that they can only take in 2 or 3 different foods, if any at all, thus possibly requiring the necessity of a feeding tube. In short, this would be the moment where you would use the whole phrase of correlation is not causation.
1965, researchers from 14 hospitals associated with major universities undertook the National Collaborative Perinatal Project, tracking 30,000 children from birth to age 8. This was no half-baked survey-based analysis. The study conducted 9 separate screenings covering neurology, psychology, speech, language, hearing, and visual function. Every developmental quirk, anomaly, and disorder was logged with painstaking detail. Autism, a condition characterized by profound impairments in social communication and behavior.
I'm probably going to sound like I don't know if you remember it's the episode of The Sopranos where Tony's son AJ is getting diagnosed, or he's getting diagnostic assessments to see if he has ADHD, and I mean the way it's talked about is quite ableist, and it's definitely talked about in a disease model, and one of the scenes in the episode is where they're getting the testing done, and they have the preliminary reports back, and the psychologist is, and I never I never liked the psychologist that was doing it. He seemed very smarmy and just really kind of like sort of opportunistic, and I don't know if they had the actor portray him as that on purpose, or if that's I don't know, but I definitely didn't like the psychologist who was giving the tests, and so when he presents the preliminary findings to Tony and Carmela, he talks about how, well, we find that that Anthony has been he has problems with waiting his turn, he has problems with fidgeting with hands and feet, and Tony cuts him off and he's like, fidgeting with hands and feet, and he's like, yes sir. He's like, what's a fidget? And the psychologist sits there and he's kind of confused, and Tony's like, what is a fidget? What constitutes a fidget? And then Carmela's like, Tony, because she sees he's getting kind of keyed up, and then he basically goes on to say that kind of something to the effect of that, the problem with you all doctors is that you all want to make a disease out of everything these days. So forgive me if I kind of have my own little Tony Soprano moment of when Kennedy is talking about profound, what the hell did he say? Profound deficits in socializing, or whatever the fuck it was he said. Well, what's a profound social deficit? What constitutes that? Because I'll talk to my friends like online or on the phone, and if they lived closer, I'd visit them. But to be perfectly honest, interacting with people is not something that I'm able to do it, and have been able to learn how to do it over the years, to where I can strike up a conversation with people that I meet or people that I know. But that's not always my first inclination to do. It doesn't come naturally. On the whole, it doesn't come naturally to me. My social battery gets easily depleted. It's very limited in its energy, and there's times when I come off of a not really an hour long phone call does it, but usually if it's over an hour, or even a 2 or 3 hour long phone call, I'll come off of that, and I will have been sitting down the whole time, or sitting down and then standing up from time to time. But whichever I'm doing, like just sitting down or just walking around a little bit, I'll come off typically a 2 hour or 3 hour phone call, literally feeling like I just went through like a marathon, and it's very exhausting, and I pretty much am to the point where I'll usually voice message with people or text message with people, and oftentimes I'll have to go a couple days before talking to some people again. And if that's me, I can just imagine what it's like with somebody who's autistic, and it's not them being asocial, and it's not them having issues where it's not even that they can't socialize. From some of the autistic people I know, it's that they socialize in different ways. And
Screen dim. Pause. Forward 10 sec play.
Kennedy's nonsense right here of the intense social deficits, or however the hell he words it. Let me go back
Rewind 10
about
seconds.
that.
Button. Rewind 10 play. Button.
That ignores everything I just said. It's not so much social deficits as much as it's socializing in different ways. But if you want everybody to be neurotypical or non-autistic, well, then yeah, you're obviously going to paint it as a problem that needs to be solved, when it's really more about understanding how an autistic socializes and being willing to meet them on their level.
Play. For pause. Button.
Work on a disorder was logged with painstaking detail. autism, a condition characterized by profound impairments in social communication.
Profound impairments in social communication. Well, Kennedy, what is a profound impairment in social communication? What constitutes that? Like what symptoms make that up? The fact that I have to go a day or two between phone calls between me and some of the friends that I tend to have more extended phone conversations with, is that a social impairment? Because to me, an impairment implies possibly not being able to do a thing at all, or having such difficulty with it that you can't do it on your own. And even if you need high support needs to get it done, that doesn't make you less than any other human being. And that's part of the danger in Kennedy's rhetoric.
Behavior would have stood out like a fashion, like a neon sign. There were 14 cases. That's 4.7 per 10,000. So we know what the historic numbers are, and we know what the numbers are today. And it's time for everybody to stop attributing this to this ideology of epidemic denial.
Us understanding that there's more autistic people in varying manifestations of said neurotype, I guess you would call it. Us understanding that, thanks to that, the better understanding of that neurotype, that there are more autistic people around, men, women, children, various other adults. That's not us giving into this. What did he call it?
10 seconds. Button. Play. Button. Pause.
We know what the numbers are today, and it's time for everybody to stop attributing this to this ideology of epidemic denial.
We're not attributing this to epidemic denial, and us acknowledging that there's more autistic people is not a fucking ideology. It's us recognizing shit for what it really is. If anything, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a, what can I call it? He has an autism denial. He denies that there are autistic people around here in the sense, not in the sense of like, he's not saying that there isn't autistic people. He is saying there are autistic people, but he's wanting to acknowledge this only insofar as that they have a disease. And if you cure the autism, then no more autistic people. So what is that if not autism denial?
In 2009, the California State Legislature charged the Mind Institute at UC Davis with because this myth was already becoming pervasive.
Oh my
The
God.
myth of epidemic denial was already becoming pervasive in the mainstream media. The California legislature directed the Mind Institute at UC Davis to answer the question. And Irva Hertz-Pichotto is a highly esteemed, revered scientist, neurology, and epidemiologist, came back with a definitive answer: the epidemic is real. Only a very, very small portion of it can be changed to can be charged to better recognition or better diagnostic criteria. I want to say a couple of other things. There are many, many other studies that affirm this, and instead of listening to this canard of epidemic denial, all you have to do is start reading a little science, because the answer is very clear.
I fucking hate this guy. I hate this guy so fucking much. Listening to this canard of epidemic denial, and all you have to do is read a little science. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a fucking scientist. He's not. He's he's an attorney who went after corporations. And just a quick side note here. You might not know it from the way I'm talking about him, but actually between 2009 and really up into the early 2010s, I actually followed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Not just followed him on social media. Like I followed him when he was on his Ring of Fire radio show with Mike Papantonio, and they were also joined sometimes with David Bender and Sam Cedar. And at the time, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had a lot of good stuff to say about just like the total fuck ups that, like by fuck ups I'm talking about corporate types who added to the dangers of climate change and global warming, and who were polluting our environment. And Kennedy made a lot of sense when he was basically lambasting them for what they were doing. Now, I will say that around 2009, when the swine flu came around, yeah, he was starting to talk some anti-vaxxer shit about the mercury and thimerosal in the vaccines, and be careful that you don't have impurities in the swine flu vaccine, and so on and so forth. And I kind of thought it was ridiculous at the time. I didn't agree with what he was saying, but at that time I didn't really know too much about the autism vaccine controversy, although I was still pro-vaccine, and I wasn't on this. I wasn't ignorant enough to want to go towards the anti-vaxxer mindset. And then when I started to read more about the anti-vaxxer ideology, now there's a real ideology. When I started reading more about that in the last 7 or 8 years, learning more about ABA therapy, well, let's just call it for what it is, autism conversion torture is all it is, and started reading about all that, and then reading, damn it, I can't think of the guy's name. He wrote a book called The Doctor Who Fooled the World, and it was a book about Andrew Wakefield and how that all came about with the anti-vaccine crowd, and just the implications that had for the autism community. Then that's when I really knew that and plus some of the things that Kennedy was starting to talk about, just about like some anti-LGBT shit that he was saying about plastics in the water causing sexual dysphoria. He really meant gender dysphoria, but it's the same. It's more or less the same thing. Yeah, that's when I pretty much quit following him altogether, in the sense of like making the actual decision that of no, I'm not gonna I'm gonna intentionally not follow this guy at all anymore. And so yeah, in the beginning he made sense, but then I've also read some more stuff and listened to some podcasts that basically talk about how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been really, well, to put it bluntly, a straight up fucking sex pest towards women. So yeah, there's nothing redeemable. There's nothing redeemable about this guy at all. There just isn't. And getting back onto the subject, though, yeah, he's totally out of his fucking mind. And just to see him go from where he was in the late 2000s and the somewhat actual sense that he made to this is really very frightening.
Rewind 10 seconds. Play. Button. Pause.
To this canard of epidemic denial, all you have to do is start reading a little science, because the answer is very clear.
And where I was going with that is when he was making sense back then, as the attorney that he was going after corporations, I'm sure he read a few scientific documents and had a lot of valid things to say, but that still didn't make him a scientist. So it's really almost funny. It would be almost funny if it wasn't so terrifying, him telling everybody that all they need to do is read some science, given how he's obviously not read any science, and what he is reading is, much of it is junk science, to justify the autism, the anti-autism and ableist bullshit that he's spouting here.
And this is catastrophic for our country. There's a recent study by Blaxell et al. And a team of other researchers that said that the cost of treating autism in this country by 2035, so within 10 years, will be $1 trillion a year. This is added to already astronomical healthcare costs. And then there's an individual injury. These are kids that, this is a preventable disease. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be.
Autism is not caused by environmental exposure to toxins or individual injuries. There's a high genetic component within the cause of autism.
Genes do not cause epidemics. They can provide a vulnerability. You need an environmental toxin. And
No, you don't.
Irva Hertz-Pachoda pointed out that because of this mythology,
God.
at 10 to 20, that the amount of money and resources put into studying genetic causes, which is a dead end, has been historically 10 to 20 times the amount spent by NIH and other agencies to study environmental factors, to study exposures, to study external factors, and that's where we're going to find the answer. This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure.
Environmental exposure, nonsense aside, what he's saying here is, it's so fucking gross that I don't even know what to say about it. This is just disgusting. I mean, if you took out autism and put blind or gay or black or any other thing in its place, this would be the same fucking conversation when eugenics was around. When eugenics was overtly practiced here in our country. And spoiler alert, Hitler did not come up with eugenics, and neither did the Nazis. They took inspiration from us for that. This is disgusting. This is just absolutely vile.
Into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date.
If some of them never want to go out on a date, that's their fucking decision. You absolute fucking asshole. And then the shit about paying taxes. Are you fucking serious? And then never being able to write a poem or play baseball or what? Well, some of them who might never go on to play baseball might not want to do it. And maybe they might not be poets. In short, what Kennedy's really saying here is that they'll never do what able-bodied, non-autistic society wants them to do. And that for him is a problem. And this is more ideology that he's pushing that really is going to continue to push people to want to cure autism.
Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children. And we need to put an end to it. And I think I'm going to have Walter Zaharodny, who is the most senior researcher for this project for ADDM, and has been doing this for many years, to come up and say a little.
I don't know who this guy is that he just said.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm here as a long-term autism researcher and a clinical psychologist. I get to wear two hats, one with patients and families trying to help them get to a diagnosis and to interventions and treatments, but also for the last 20 plus years as the director of the New Jersey Autism Study, which is a CDC-sponsored autism surveillance system. We've monitored autism in New Jersey in concert with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention since 2000. When we began our endeavor with CDC, we expected to do maybe 2 or 3 baseline studies to establish how many children have autism, because it was not expected that autism prevalence would increase. Other childhood disabilities, neurologic disorders do not increase or change over time. But somehow, for some reason, with autism, everything was different.
It sounds like he's just going to basically say in a few different wording variants what Kennedy's been saying, and I still disagree. I'm not bothered by the increase in autism because it's not a fucking disease. It's not something to be treated. You give supports when supports are needed, depending on whatever the autism looks like in the various kids. For example, if you have a kid with autism, an autistic kid who has epilepsy, you fucking give them seizure meds and whatever other medical treatments. Notice I said medical treatments with epilepsy being an actual disease. You give them the appropriate treatments, anti-seizure medication, and various other supports. And any sensory issues where eating only 2, 3, or 4 or 5 foods, if they can even eat that many, and taking care of that issue with a possible feeding tube if necessary, then you handle it like that. There, problem solved. Aside from that, there's no need to cure autism.
Autism went from being a very unusual, rare disability, which affected, as the secretary said, 1 child in maybe 10,000, to being known in every community, every school district.
Yeah, no, it's a fucking tragedy.
Center that cares for children with disabilities.
Oh, it's terrifying. Oh my God.
Autism
I'm scared.
is real. It's a true disability.
Oh my God.
It's not a personality quirky issue. Everything is changed for the individual with autism, and while there's a wide range of expression, it does change the family, and it does inevitably change the community and the society in which we find it. Autism prevalence has increased very dramatically. It's increased in New Jersey, where we have excellent resources and access.
What is this voice he's using?
And autism has increased. Autism has increased so much in our area.
What? He sounds like what was that guy's name? Ben Stein, who did the Clear Eyes eye drop commercials. The difference is clear eyes. Wow, this fucking guy sounds like he's Ben Stein's bastard child or long lost child or whatever. And I just want to check real quick to see how much more time we have on this.
14 minutes, 144 views 1 day ago. 14 full track position. Next video. Track position. 14 minutes of 30 minutes. Adjusted.
God.
Swipe up.
All right, I'm probably going to cut down my cutting in on this and just let the rest of this play. Yeah, we got 14 minutes out of this whole thing, and this thing's like 30 minutes, and I really want to get this done. I'm literally about over this.
Next forward 10 seconds. Play. Button. Pause.
Increased in all the states in the network. It's increased not only by the CDC, ATOM network, active surveillance activities, but it's increased according to federal IDEA statistics and information from a multitude of surveys. It is a true increase. There is better awareness of autism, but better awareness of autism cannot be driving disability like autism to increase by 300% in 20 years. That's what we saw in New Jersey. That's what the CDC report of yesterday indicates. And that's what, in my opinion, future reports from epidemiologists will show. The data provided in yesterday's report strongly suggests that not only is this a high point of autism prevalence, but in the future, rates can only be higher. Autism deserves to be treated as a real public health phenomenon, and I would say is an urgent public health crisis. It's not just that we're more astute or...
And what he said right there goes right back to, because I'm sure there's going to be people, oh, no, you took him out of context. He wasn't saying that. He was saying X, Y, and Z. No, you're taking him out of context. He's not going to actually want to push for things like abortions to try to abort infants that have not been born yet, whose genetic screening showed that they have a risk of autism. He's not going to want to abort them as a method of eugenics, nor is he going to want to bring eugenics back. To say that he is just taking him out of context, there's people who are going to say that, and my thing is no. No, we're not taking him and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. out of context. Him and Kennedy Jr. are the context. This is exactly what they are ultimately pushing for, even if by implication. And why wouldn't they be? If you're going to call autism a public health phenomena and even a public health emergency, then by implication, why wouldn't you advocate stuff like abortions to try to reduce the existence of unborn infants who have preterm testing done to see if they have autism, which would be some sort of genetic testing. And then you would have, why wouldn't you have abortions for that? And even worse, for autistic kids and adults who are living, how would this not lead to a new version of forced sterilization for them in an effort to further limit autism?
Perceptive. It's not like 2 or 3 children out of for every one with autism has remained invisible. Autism is striking, and the consequences are lifelong. So I would urge everyone to consider the likelihood that autism, whether you call it an epidemic, a tsunami, or a surge of autism, is a real thing that we don't understand, and it must be true.
It can be understood. You guys just don't want to understand it when it's not being put through a tragedy / medical / public health emergency lens like what you all want it to be. And I wonder how much these assholes are getting from Autism Speaks in terms of donations to put on this bullshit.
Or caused by environmental or risk factors. We need to address this question seriously because, in my opinion, for the last 20 years, we've collected data but not made real progress in understanding what causes autism or how to effectively prevent it or treat it effectively. So I urge you to read the report very carefully. I urge you to do something that nobody does and go into the many supplemental tables and see that autism is a true phenomenon and that we need a correct perception, not a perception that allows us to just provide services without understanding the root causes or the true factors at play. So thank you for your attention. I wish we could answer questions.
I think we can. Let me just say one other thing.
All right, so like I said, I did not see any of this before reacting to it right now, so I don't know if they're going to actually answer questions. And when they do some of these talks and have questions, sometimes they'll get the microphone right up to the person asking the question, and then other times they'll just paraphrase it back to the person. All that to say that I don't know if they're going to take questions, if any of us will be able to hear it very well. If not, I apologize. So we'll probably only be able to hear Kennedy and whoever this other fucking quack is. We'll probably only be able to hear their answers.
I referred to a number of studies. There are many, many, many others in the scientific literature that absolutely explode this mythology that this is, that the autism epidemic is not real. If you read the literature, it is absolutely indefensible to continue to promote this. But it doesn't take you to read the literature. It just takes a little common sense. If the epidemic is an artifact, a better diagnostic criteria or better
which it
recognition, then why are we not seeing it in older people? Why is this only happening in young people? I asked Walter before we came out here, I said, have you ever seen anybody our age? I'm 71 years old with full-blown autism, head banging, nonverbal,
because head banging and not verbal is not the whole of autism, you fucking asshole.
Toilet trained, stimming, toe walking, these other stereotypical features. Where are these people walking around the mall? You can't find them. They're not in homes. There aren't.
I know exactly what I would love to see happen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and I, because of YouTube's censorship bullshit, I can't say it, and I'm not going to, but you don't know how badly I want to say, you don't know how badly I want to say it about what I'd love to see happen to Kennedy. You don't know how badly I want to say it. I fucking hate this guy so much. This is really, and you hear some laughter in my voice, but it's laughter out of just pure fucking disgust. I really hate this fucking guy so much, and but I can't. I'll just leave it at that. This guy is just he's really a fucking danger to our society, and within this context, obviously a danger to the autistic community. And the danger within him is not even what he would do to the autistic community personally, but the shit that some of these parents who are ableist towards their autistic kids, what they would be inspired to do based on this bastard's rhetoric. That's the real fucking danger of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Because you obviously are going to have a lot of these these parents who are going to be the Susan Atkinsons to his Charles Manson and go right along with it and give their kids all kinds of fucked up quack therapies and make them drink bleach like that one fucked up cult did to try to cure their kids' autism. The autism of the kids of the parents that were in the cult. Yeah, that was the real thing. So this is just pure evil. I know people don't like to hear that descriptor anymore, but no, this is pure evil. This is exactly how shit like eugenics got going here in the States. This is the kind of rhetoric that was that powered Hitler in Germany and the slow creeping towards the Holocaust. It starts with evil, hateful rhetoric like this.
No homes for them. There are no institutions for them. Why are we seeing them on the street? Anybody can look around and see that this is a canard. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it so pervasive? Why has it been thrown up against us for so many years? And clearly there are industries. This is coming from an environmental toxin.
I know I said I quit interrupting, but in this case, take out autism and put gay. Why is there so many fucking gay people in the roaming the streets now and walking all over the place? Back in my day, I'm 71 years old, and Didn't see all these fucking gays around here. Why are we only seeing them now? And it's only these young people that are the gays. It's the same. It's that conversation, but now with autism. See the danger?
Somebody made a profit by putting that environment.
And if you don't, well, that same rhetoric about, well, what's all the gays doing here these days? That's what helped to empower the pseudo-psychology and pseudoscience bullshit that was behind the torture known as reparative therapy that's been applied to LGBT people. And you take out, you take that about gays. Well, this with Kennedy is that same thing, but with autism.
Toxin into our air, our water, our medicines, our food. And it's to their benefit to say, to normalize it. To say, this is all normal, it's always been here. But that's not good for our country. And it's not good for the press to not be more inquisitive, to not be more skeptical. And within 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it.
You'll hear Kennedy talk a lot about, and that's my thing. I don't know what this is like. He keeps talking about toxins. I mean, it's like, is this like what is this fucking hard on that this idiot gets about toxins? And while we're on the subject of toxins, and I'm not trying to demonize people who went through addiction issues and stuff like that, and I know those can be very, very hard and very painful issues to go through. Okay, and I applaud those who've gotten recovery from them. But my point towards Kennedy himself is, he talks all this shit about toxins. Hey, Kennedy, what about all the toxins you put in your fucking body when you're addicted to heroin? How about that? You want to fucking talk about toxins so much? I mean, why don't you deal with those toxins? In short, how about you deal with your own fucking toxins before you go pointing out everybody else's? Not that there's toxins that cause autism, obviously, but it just shows the fucking amoral fucked upness of this asshole.
It has not been done before. And we're going to do it in a thorough and comprehensive way, and we're going to get back to with an answer to the American people very, very quickly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Secretary Kennedy, I was not diagnosed with autism in 1984 when I initially did it. It took me 5 years to get diagnosed later. You also talk about the fact that the numbers increase with Black and Latino people, but your own study says these findings may indicate that improvements in ASD awareness, identification, and access to services in communities among Black and Latino, Hispanic, and API children have improved. Do you think that, are you denying that in the past Black, Latino, and AAPI people had not been diagnosed, they had been diagnosed with behavioral disorders, they've been disciplined, they've been incarcerated, and now they're finally getting the services that they need?
Oh yeah, and there are small slivers of the autism epidemic, maybe 10% to 25% according to the studies. The highest studies are around 25%. That can be attributed to better recognition and better diagnosis. That means 85% are still, or 75% to 80% are part of an epidemic, and that's too many. And that is what we need to redress.
That's too many, he says. According to who? According to who? It's too many. According to who? Who is it too many for? You? Neurotypical, neuronormative society? School teachers who want kids to be in the little typical box that they try to put them in? Employers who just want their workers to bang away at a computer all day? Who is it too many for?
Walter, do you have something you'd like to add?
There's better recognition of autism and better awareness because there are more children with autism, and the professionals have greater reason to learn from what their experience and to diagnose. I wish the contrary was true, but it's not like better awareness pushes something that's not there. Rather, something that's there is being recognized.
Can you please say your first and last name and outlet before asking a question? Thank you.
Secretary Kennedy, Amanda Seitz with the Associated Press. Some of the CDC's own research has concluded that there's a genetic link at play with autism. Are you saying today that you don't trust that research or that it was wrong? Could you expand on that?
I want to, she's talking about the CDC right there. What I can say to that is Kennedy has made disparaging comments about the CDC before. Basically talking about how they're a militarized governmental body and just basically disparaging them all across the board. So, yeah, I can only imagine what he's going to say here. Because, yeah, he's said very dissenting things towards the CDC in recent years, particularly around the pandemic of COVID. So,
no, there is, we have really good genetic markers now, and they provide a vulnerability. But those genetic markers alone are not going to dictate your destiny. You need an environmental toxin. There are many genetic markers that dictate the methylation capacity of the human body. Those contribute to, those dictate, listen, with many people smoke cigarettes.
oh my God.
And only 1 in 5 died from lung cancer. There were 4 of them that didn't. And those were the ones that had some circumstances, probably genetic, that made them more susceptible to it. And the same is true. We know that glutathione production, and glutathione is an enzyme that helps the human body excrete metals and toxins.
Okay, he wants to hit this drum over and over again about environmental toxins and just toxins in general. And he used a word a minute ago, methylation, and then he interrupted himself to go on this other tangent. Methylation is and I'm still reading up on it myself, but it'd be easier to talk about what it relates to, which are things called methylating agents, some of which can be toxic. Dimethylnitrosamine is a toxin, and it's I'll say it again. It's called dimethylnitrosamine. The other name for it is its abbreviation is also DMN. That's Delta Mike Nancy, and then it's also known under the other name of N-nitrosodemethylamine, but it's typically known again as dimethylnitrosamine or DMN. Dimethylnitrosamine is a oily, yellow, slightly sweet-tasting liquid, and it was used back in the 60s, and I don't know if it's still being used today in this capacity, but it's been known historically to be used in cancer research labs to induce tumors in animals to basically study the analysis, do analysis of cancer and its progression. So it was used for cancer research, in other words. Dimethylnitrosamine is a toxin that can be easily dissolved in water, and it affects only the liver and is highly toxic. It goes into the liver and basically, and I need to kind of rephrase that a little bit. It affects only in the liver, only in the sense of that its primary effect is on the liver. And then, of course, it has obviously secondary effects as you start to have the disease process begin. dimethylnitrosamine goes into the liver and basically leaves a chemical mark on the DNA, and it attacks the DNA and basically does it through a process called DNA methylation. And when it does this, it basically inserts its own replicas of the and I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, and I apologize. In short, it basically attacks the DNA and then goes in and spreads its own mark on the DNA, and then the rest of the DNA continues. The rest of the DNA corrupts, and then more of the DNA gets corrupted, and what you're essentially left with is corrupted DNA throughout the liver. And then that mutation is what possibly will start the cancer process and then lead to cancer. In the animal models, dimethylnitrosamine not only caused tumors in the liver, but it also led to other tumors in the kidneys, which, and I don't know if the liver and kidneys in animals are positioned in the same area, but like it would definitely make sense that progression from liver to kidney in humans could happen so easily because the kidneys are fairly close to the liver, at least particularly on the right side. When you have liver cancer that's induced from dimethylnitrosamine poisoning, treatment for the cancer is often very difficult. To put it bluntly, it could easily be a treatment-resistant cancer, depending on how much damage is done and how far along the process is. And then, of course, how much of the dimethylnitrosamine was introduced into the person's system. So, yeah, that's... dimethylnitrosamine is a toxin. Asbestos is a toxin. But these toxins do not fucking cause autism.
People with low glutathione production are more vulnerable. People with the MTHFR gene, which dictates methylation, are more vulnerable. People with high testosterone are more vulnerable. So there are a lot of genetic vulnerabilities. But you need an environmental toxin.
Alex at Fox. Alex?
Hi, Alex Hoff, Fox News. In seeking out an environmental toxin, do you feel that if one or several are detected or put on your radar, do you think it would be the same one causing issues at both ends of the spectrum? Children who struggle with, let's say, sensory issues, all the way to those who are fully care dependent, unable to speak. Would it be the same catalyst in all of those varying conditions, you think?
Well, this kind of studies we're going to do, and you're right, there's a spectrum of injuries, and we don't know. There are studies that look at maternal activation, so that something happens in the womb. There are studies.
Oh, we're going to be back to blaming the parent, the mothers, huh?
Genetic causes.
Nice.
The issue that we know is genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin. And we're going to look at all the potential culprits. We're going to look at mold. We're going to look at food additives. We're going to look at pesticides. We're going to look at air and water and medicines. So, we're going to look at ultrasound, because there's a timeline that, something happened. In fact, Congress said to EPA, ordered EPA to tell us what year the autism epidemic began. The EPA scientists came back and said it happened in 1989.
Oh, here we go. Now, how did I know? How did I know he was going to mention 1989? Yeah, it's always 1989 with this fucker. Well, I mean, either that or 1987. But yeah, it's like yeah, this fucker always he's obsessed with 1989.
You have to find a toxin that became ubiquitous around that time period. And that affected every demographic, from Cubans in Key Biscayne to Inuit in Alaska. And that affects boys at a 4-to-1 ratio as girls. There's a limited universe of those, but actually it's quite large. And, Hertz Bichotta was the one who suggested that one of the things we have to look at is ultrasound. I don't think that that's probably a factor, but it's one of the exposures that became ubiquitous during that period. And we're going to look at all of them agnostically. We're going to find the potential exposures that increased during that time period, and we're going to we're going to see if there is a link to this injury.
Thank you. Nathan at Epic Times.
Sure.
No, Nathan. Nathan.
Yes, Nathan Worcester with Epic Times. During that same time period of increasing autism prevalence or diagnoses, there's also been a significant increase in maternal and paternal age. Couldn't that be a significant contributor?
With what?
Beyond maternal and paternal age?
Yeah, we're going to look at all of that. We're going to look at obesity in the parents. We're going to look at the age of the parents. We're going to look at diabetes in the parents. We're going to look at all of these potential exposures. And because of AI and because of the digitalization of health records and the massive health records that are now available to us, we can do this much more quickly than has ever been done in the past.
Cheyenne. This is our last question. Thank you.
Do you still pledge to have answers by September, or is that going to be the beginning of this process? And are you open to following the science, regardless of whether it confirms some of your expectations or not?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna follow the science no matter what it says, and we will have some of the answers by September. It's going to be an evolving process. We're going to we're going to issue grants the way that it's always done to university researchers and others. We're going to remove the taboo. People will know they can research and they can follow the science no matter what it says without any kind of fear that they're going to be censored, that they're going to be gaslighted, that they're going to be silenced, they're going to be defunded, delicensed, and we're going to give them permission to do this research. And then we're going to open it up to the research community, and we're going to task them with certain outcomes, and we're going to have them come and bid on how to do the research. This is all being run by Jay Bhattacharya I think Martin Koldorf may be also working on this on designing the grant proposals. So it's going to be done by credible scientists, by the most credible scientists from all over the world, and we're going to do it very, very quickly. Yeah, one more question. Can you identify yourself?
Once you identify which environmental toxins are causing autism, what do you expect the impact to be on the industries that are causing those? You cited industry as something that would cause it.
I think we're going to figure out a way to make pressure on them to remove it. And I think also, there will be market forces that also exert pressure on them to remove it. And I want to say that I'm very grateful to President Trump because he tasked me on day one of this job with making this a priority, of finding out what's causing the autism epidemic, and we are going to do it for him. Thank you all very much.
Forward 10, pause, button. Rewind 10, pause, button. Forward, next video, track position, 30 minutes of 30 minutes, adjustable. Next, forward 10 seconds, pause, button.
It's over. We got through it. So I'll give my closing remarks here. I don't know anything I can add to this that I haven't already said throughout this whole video. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s rhetoric is as dangerous and harmful and, well, toxic, socially, medically, and in all other ways as it is hurtful. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s rhetoric is not totally unlike the rhetoric that we've heard against people who had low IQs back in the days of eugenics. It's not completely dissimilar to the rhetoric against black people, especially when the rhetoric would be medicalized against them, when blacks were being accused, claimed to have a disorder called drapetomania that made them have an irrational desire to want to run away from their slave owners. Spoiler alert, the drapetomania was just the term that they needed to justify the whipping posts. And of course, this rhetoric is, I'm sure, not completely dissimilar to rhetoric employed by Hitler when he was talking about the Jews and various other minorities that he would go on to authorize murdering for in the Holocaust. Should Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s rhetoric be taken seriously, then we will see an even more worsening of the anti-intellectualism in which we're living right now. And not only that, but we'll definitely see a worsening increase in the mistreatment and medical and or physical and even institutional abuse of autistic kids and even autistic adults by their parents, some of whom are the neurotic, no, I'm not going to say neurotic, but no, the evil, hateful autism parents who would either rather see them driven into a lake or driven off of a bridge or euthanized in some way or cured. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s rhetoric should be taken seriously, and while it is absolute buffoonish bullshit that he's spouting, it should still be taken seriously in the sense of understanding that it can do real-world harm. This kind of rhetoric has no place in society, and for people who you have, and I want to kind of go into a side tangent here about, you have the people who want to have extremely loose gun legislation such that anybody could go and buy a gun like you would go and buy a laptop from Best Buy or a portable radio from whatever store you can find. And the people who justify this almost non-existent gun legislation allowing them to buy any gun they want to will say things like, we need to protect ourselves from an out-of-control government. Had Germans back in the Holocaust or the days of Nazi Germany been well armed with their collection of guns, then they would have been able to have stopped Hitler. This ideology is flawed, not just because it isn't true to history, because it isn't, but it's flawed because how are you going to be able to shoot propaganda? How do you shoot words? How do you defend yourself with a gun against ableist rhetoric that sounds on the surface like it's caring about someone when actually beneath the surface it could lead to the worst reemerging of overt eugenics towards the autistic community? These things don't start with gas chambers, lobotomies, electroshock therapy, or any of these other pseudoscience quack therapies. These problems of destroying the autistic and any other group start with words. They start with ableist jokes. And then the quick assurance, if you have an autistic person sitting there,
play next video button,
that you don't mean that towards them. You're just talking about the autistic who flaps their hands and rocks and hits their head against the wall. And then it goes from these jokes to talking about well-meaning endeavors to cure autism. And then parents who would want to drive off a bridge with their autistic kids rather than see them suffer. There's no guns that would ever shoot bullets to fix this. Because, again, These don't start with the gas chambers. These don't start with ABA torture. These hate movements, first in little groups of people and then eventually codified into law, start with words. First jokes and then eventual harmful rhetoric like what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has said. And Donald J. Trump is the one who, like Kennedy Jr. said, is allowing for this. This kind of hate starts with words, and we should call it out for what it is. We shouldn't dismiss Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as some stumbling and bumbling buffoon who just spouts meaningless, unintelligible bullshit. Because for some people, which would include some of the parents of autistic kids who would want to see them be put through painful pseudoscience to be cured, for some of these parents, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s unintelligible, hateful bullshit is not that. But it is something that speaks to them. And if we dismiss what he's saying as him being a buffoon and just talking mindless bullshit and laughing it off, then that's only going to enable him to continue. We must call out all these hateful things that him and other people who think like him say. We must call it out every single time, whether it be on Facebook, Substack, or any other social media platform. Silence is complicity, even if you think it's not. And to try to laugh it off, along with the others who laugh it off because it actually is funny, is still to collude with the problem. So those are my closing remarks on that front. But regarding the autistic community and just them and the disabilities community in general, I stand with you guys, and I stand against hateful ableists like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I will continue to track this story. And yeah, the part about curing or the whatever it was he said about like having autism figured out by September. Yeah, I will actually be tracking what ends up getting said about that over the next days, weeks, and just on into leading up to September, because yeah, I would love to see what all that entails. So that's going to be the end of the video. If you like this video, comment, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Speech on. Pause video. Stop recording video. Button.